She didn't even look up when she said it. "You'll ruin the wedding if you show up looking like this." Just like that. One short, cold sentence that cut deeper than any shout ever could. When your own family turns your worth into a condition, silence becomes its own kind of strength. If you've ever been made to feel not enough, this story is for you. Stay with me, you don't want to miss what happens next. I stood in the doorway of her kitchen, the afternoon sun falling across the counter in thin orange stripes, warming everything except her. She kept slicing strawberries, neat and fast, like my feelings were something she didn't have time to acknowledge. Or maybe something she just didn't understand. I didn't argue. I didn't gasp. I didn't even blink. I only felt something inside me fold inward, and then go quiet. Not hurt, not angry, quiet. A silence that felt strangely steady, almost heavy, like a stone settling at the bottom of a pond. My mother finally turned her head just slightly, enough to glance at my reflection in the oven door. "I'm only being honest," she added, as if honesty were an excuse to be cruel. 30 pounds. So, you can do that if you actually try. The knife clicked against the cutting board. Click, click, click. A rhythm that made the kitchen feel colder with every sound. I rested one hand on the back of a chair so she wouldn't see it shake. Not from weakness. No. It was from the realization that this wasn't new. She had always said things like this, just softer, dressed as concerns or jokes. But now she didn't bother dressing them at all. "Is that really what you think?" I asked quietly, keeping my voice steady. My question wasn't loud enough to echo, but it carried weight, enough that she paused mid-slice. Before she answered, something flickered in her planner on the table beside her. A page slightly turned out, the corner bent. I noticed the handwriting immediately. My handwriting. A whole column of tasks written in my careful script. Jewelry pickup. Seating confirmation. Makeup artist deposit. All assigned to me. All things she claimed I never helped with. That was the first unsettling clue. One she didn't realize she'd left open like a confession. I straightened the chair slowly. "Just answer me," I said. "Is that truly how you see me?" She sighed dramatically, the way she did whenever she wanted to remind me that I was a burden. "I see things realistically," she replied. "This is your sister's big day. Everyone will be taking photos. You don't want to be the one everyone whispers about." I almost laughed. The irony tasted bitter. I had spent months helping with this wedding. Quietly, invisibly, the way I helped with everything. I was the one who had fixed the bride's veil after she stepped on it. I was the one who handled vendor calls when my mother didn't have time. I was the one who kept the peace when my sister snapped under stress. But none of that mattered. Not when my appearance threatened her idea of perfection. She resumed slicing berries, pretending my presence wasn't even worth a full glance. The kitchen smelled like citrus dish soap and overripe fruit, sweet but suffocating. A smell that stuck to the back of my throat. 30 pounds, she repeated, softer this time, as if that made it kinder. "You can do that. You're just comfortable. Too comfortable." My breath caught. Comfortable? That was what she thought this body represented. Comfort? Not age, not hormones, not grief from losing my husband 2 years ago, not the life I had lived and survived. Just comfort. I stepped farther into the room. The floor tile felt cold through my slippers. Outside, somewhere down the block, a dog barked twice. A reminder the world kept moving even when I felt frozen. She wiped her hands on a towel and grabbed the bowl of berries. "And don't pout," she added. "I'm telling you this because I love you." Love. People have such interesting definitions of that word. I watched her carry the bowl toward the refrigerator. And again I saw it, the planner. Exposed. A secret she hadn't intended to reveal. On the opposite page, written in smaller letters, was a note I had forgotten about. An appointment with my doctor from 2 weeks earlier. A follow-up she didn't know about. A follow-up where I had learned something she definitely didn't know. A small detail, barely a line. But it was my hidden advantage. Something that made her words sting less than they used to. I didn't say anything about it. Not yet. The refrigerator door closed with a dull thud. She turned toward me again, finally focusing on my face. "Well, say something." "What exactly do you want me to say?" I asked. "That you understand," she said, shrugging. "That you'll make an effort. That you won't embarrass us." Not her. Us. Meaning the family. meaning the people whose acceptance I had spent years chasing, only to realize they had never been chasing mine. I see, I whispered because I finally did. Not just her comment but the pattern behind it. The years woven into that one careless sentence. She frowned. What's with that tone? I'm just thinking, I replied. And I was thinking of the small, unsettling clues I had noticed earlier. The fact that she relied on me more than she admitted. The fact that she needed me for this wedding in ways she didn't even realize. The fact that she believed I would always show up no matter how she spoke to me. And the fact that for the first time I wasn't sure I wanted to. Don't get dramatic, she warned, misreading my quiet as rebellion. She always mistook silence for drama. I walked toward the planner, pretending to straighten a stack of mail nearby so I could get a better look without seeming confrontational. The angle revealed even more tasks. More responsibilities dumped on me. More proof she had already put me in charge of half the wedding while telling me I shouldn't attend it. The contradiction settled into my bones like a cold wind. She leaned against the counter, arms crossed. If you care about your sister, you'll do this one thing for her. Losing weight isn't hard. I blinked slowly, letting her words wash over me. My heart didn't race. My hands didn't tremble. Instead, a strange, steady calm filled me. Not acceptance, clarity. Do you want to know what I think? I asked. No, she said immediately, then corrected herself. Fine. Go on. But before I could speak, the back door swung open and my sister rushed in, flushed from the cold air outside. She barely glanced at me before complaining about the florist and dumping her keys onto the table. One nearly slid onto the open planner. My sister didn't notice the tension thick enough to slice with a knife. She didn't notice my mother's stiff posture or my quiet stare. She only saw her own stress. Mom, did you talk to the photographer? And where's the bracelet Aunt Marie sent? Your sister is being difficult, my mother interrupted sharply. She doesn't want to help. She doesn't want to make the wedding easier. I wasn't expecting that. The why? The speed. The ease. My sister turned toward me finally. Really? No. You know how much we have going on. I didn't say that, I replied softly. My mother lifted her chin. You implied it. I didn't imply anything. My sister folded her arms. Look, we just need you to pull your weight. That's all. I let the irony roll through me slowly. Pull my weight. Wait. Always wait. My mother cleared her throat. Just show up looking decent and do your part. Is that too much to ask? The quiet inside me deepened. Solidified. My sister looked between us awkwardly, sensing something had shifted. Mom, what did you say to her? Nothing, my mother said too quickly. Just a suggestion. A suggestion. That was one way to name an insult. I stepped forward, placing my fingertips on the edge of the planner. Mom, I said softly, I asked you a question. And I'd still like an answer. He stiffened. What question? Is that truly how you see me? The room went silent. Even the refrigerator hum seemed to pause. She opened her mouth. And that's where I stopped it. Right at the edge of her answer. Right at the moment the truth was about to surface. Right where the betrayal was fully exposed, but not yet resolved. Don't, I whispered, raising my hand slightly. Think carefully before you say anything else. Her face tightened, not with guilt but with irritation. And right then, in that tiny pause, in that thin slice of silence, I knew everything I needed to know. And right then, in that tiny pause, in that thin slice of silence, I knew everything I needed to know. But I also knew this wasn't the moment to say it. Not yet. I let the quiet stretch between us until my mother looked away first. A small victory she didn't even realize she'd given me. I stepped back from the planner, smoothing the corner of the nearest envelope as if that had been my only reason for approaching it. My sister stood near the sink, rubbing her hands together, confused by the tension but too overwhelmed to untangle it. She opened her mouth to ask something, then closed it, grabbing her purse instead. I have to get back out, she muttered, already heading toward the door. The florist messed up the carnations and Mom, please don't let anything else fall apart today. My mother forced a bright tone. Nothing will. I've got it under control. I almost smiled at that, a tight, sad smile that never made it to my lips. Under control. She had nothing under control, not even her own cruelty. When the door shut behind my sister, the kitchen went still again. My mother cleared her throat, refusing to meet my eyes. "We're done with this conversation," she said. "No," I replied softly. "We're not. But we will be, later." She scoffed, but I didn't give her the satisfaction of reacting. I walked out of the kitchen with the same calmness I'd walked into it with. Only now that calmness had purpose. The hallway felt cooler, like the air was shifting with me. I entered my room and closed the door gently, leaning against it as my heartbeat settled into a rhythm I recognized not as fear but certainty. The kind of certainty that comes from finally seeing someone without the filter of hope. For years, every insult she gave me was something I tried to fix. If she said I looked tired, I'd sleep more. If she said I wasn't enough, I'd work harder. If she hinted that I embarrassed her, I'd shrink myself to fit the mold she wanted. But something had snapped back into place in that kitchen. Something I didn't know had gone loose. I sat on the edge of my bed, letting my mind settle. The room smelled faintly of lavender from the diffuser I kept near the window. Soft winter light filtered through my curtains, painting lines across the carpet. I stared at the patterns, breathing slowly, letting each breath make room for what I needed to do. Not argue. Not confront. Not beg to be seen differently. I needed to remove myself. Completely. Finally. Quietly. I reached for my phone on the nightstand. The screen lit up with a few notifications, mostly discount messages and a weather alert warning of an upcoming cold front. Nothing from family. Not yet. They didn't realize anything was wrong. I opened the Notes app and began listing everything I normally handled without being asked. Vendor calls, reminders, confirmations, things I'd done for months without acknowledgement. As I typed, the list grew longer, and with each line my resolve grew stronger. They depended on me more than they admitted. More than they appreciated. More than they would ever say out loud. And that wasn't my burden to carry anymore. I closed the Notes app and opened another. My email. A few days earlier, completely unrelated to the wedding, I'd researched a wellness retreat out of curiosity. A quiet place by the ocean, simple rooms, long walking trails, silence before sunrise. I had bookmarked it but never intended to go. But now it felt like a doorway I had been waiting to step through. I clicked the link. The website opened with a soft, muted color palette, pale blues and calm greens. A place to let go, the header said. I didn't let myself overthink it. I scrolled to the booking page, selected a date that aligned perfectly with the wedding week, and entered my information. When the screen asked for payment, my finger hovered just a breath above the button. My chest tightened, not with doubt but with release. I pressed confirm. A notification popped up. Booking successful. Total $3,900. It felt like breathing fresh air after being underwater too long. I exhaled slowly, placing the phone beside me. The room seemed lighter somehow, even though the sun hadn't shifted. I stood and began packing, not rushing, simply choosing what I needed with deliberate movements. Comfortable clothes, walking shoes, my journal, a sweater my late husband used to wear on chilly evenings. Just touching it grounded me, reminded me of the version of myself I had been before life narrowed me into someone small. I folded everything neatly into a medium-sized duffel. No dresses for the wedding. No jewelry meant for photos. No shoes that pinched my toes because my mother liked how they looked. Only things that belonged to me, the real me. When I zipped the bag, it felt like closing a chapter. In the bathroom, I washed my face and stared at my reflection. Not judging it. Not wishing it smaller or smoother or younger. Just seeing it. A woman with lines around her mouth from years of smiling when she didn't feel like it. A woman with soft cheeks and tired eyes, but eyes that were still her own. A woman who finally stopped trying to earn a love that wasn't real. I turned off the light and stepped back into my room. The house creaked in the distance, the sound of the furnace turning on. My mother's voice floated faintly from the kitchen, talking to someone on the phone. Likely complaining about the florist or the venue. Something always required complaining. I grabbed my coat and slipped on my shoes. As I passed the planner on the table, I paused just long enough to glance at it again. All those tasks written in my handwriting, the invisible labor she depended on. And in that moment, a small question tugged at me like a loose thread. Did she even realize how much would unravel without me? I didn't know. I didn't need to know. What mattered was that I was done being their silent safety net. I walked toward the front door. My mother finally noticed movement and called out, "Where are you going?" I slipped my arms into my coat sleeves. "Out," I said softly. I need some air. We're not finished talking, she snapped. I opened the door, letting a gust of cold air sweep into the hallway. We will be, I said. Just not today. And before she could say another word, I stepped outside. The cold hit my face immediately, sharp but cleansing. The late afternoon sky was turning a dusty pink, and the neighborhood was quiet except for the distant hum of cars against the main road. I started walking, letting the chilly air clear the last traces of anger from my thoughts. At the corner of the street, a neighbor waved. I waved back, forcing a polite smile. But inside something was shifting, not breaking but realigning. As I walked, I planned without thinking. What to pack tomorrow, what to unplug, what to leave behind. Not just physically but emotionally. A lifetime of bending myself into shapes that made others comfortable. By the time I reached the end of the block, the decision was no longer a decision. It was a direction. I wasn't attending the wedding. I wasn't fixing the mistakes. I wasn't covering for anyone. I was stepping out of their perfect little show, and letting them see what the stage looked like without me. The retreat confirmation email buzzed in my pocket. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. For the first time in years, I didn't need permission. I didn't need approval. I didn't need to be accepted to feel whole. I just needed distance. And I was finally taking it. That thought carried me into the next morning like a quiet engine running beneath my ribs. I woke before the sun, not from worry or obligation, but from a strange and steady peace. For the first time in years, I didn't jump out of bed because someone needed me. I didn't have a to-do list waiting on the nightstand. I didn't have to fix anything, smooth anything over, or fill any of the invisible roles I'd always slipped into without being asked. The house was still, the kind of stillness only early morning brings. A soft draft moved under my bedroom door, carrying faint sounds from somewhere outside. Maybe a car door, maybe wind. I sat up slowly, feeling the familiar ache in my lower back but not resenting it. Age has a way of announcing itself each morning, but today even the aches felt lighter. I reached for my phone not because I expected anything but out of habit. When the screen lit up, I saw 9 missed calls, all from my mother and 3 from my sister. No voicemails. No texts. Just calls. Rapid, frantic, clustered close together as if they didn't want to leave evidence of what they were panicking about. I didn't open the call log. I didn't listen to anything. I set the phone face down on the quilt. For once, their urgency wasn't mine. A small part of me wondered how the morning had unfolded so fast. I knew the wedding prep usually started at dawn. The hair, the makeup, the photographs. The vendors arrived early. The decor crew even earlier. I had always been the one who kept the schedule straight, who reminded them who needed to be where, at what time, with what items in hand. Without me, they'd still assume I was somewhere in the house, quietly handling everything the way I always did. Only now, I wasn't. I slipped my feet into my slippers and walked toward the kitchen. The hallway floorboards creaked, the old wood giving its usual morning protest. But today the sound soothed me. I stood in the doorway of the kitchen and let the silence fill the space where my mother usually filled it with her demands. She wasn't home. She had left early for the wedding venue, expecting me to follow later, to show up before the guests, to make sure things went smoothly. I opened the refrigerator and took out a small bowl of leftover oatmeal. It felt strange to move slowly, to choose my own breakfast instead of rushing out the door. I warmed it in the microwave and stood with my hands resting on the countertop. The microwave hummed softly. Outside, a car drove past, tires hissing on the cold pavement. Everything felt ordinary, yet nothing was ordinary. When the microwave beeped, my phone buzzed again. Another call from my mother. Then immediately another. Then one from an unknown number. Probably a vendor. I didn't answer. With each buzz, a weight lifted instead of settling. I ate slowly, tasting my food for the first time instead of inhaling it between tasks. By the time I rinsed my bowl, the calls had turned into messages. Small previews flashed across the screen even though the phone was still face down. Where are you? We need you here now. This is all falling apart. Pick up. I didn't respond. Not out of cruelty. Out of self-preservation. I had spent my life running toward everyone else's fires. This time I was letting them handle their own flames. I walked back to my room and sat on the edge of the bed. The retreat confirmation email still sat unopened in my inbox. I tapped it gently, reading the welcome message, the directions, the check-in time. A peaceful warmth spread through me as I scrolled. The check-in window started at noon. The drive would take 4 hours. I had more time than I needed. More calm than they expected. As I set the phone aside again, another vibration rolled through the blankets. This time, a voicemail notification finally appeared. My mother must have slipped and recorded one without meaning to. Curiosity tugged just enough for me to press play. Her voice filled the room instantly, breathless, sharp, cracking at the edges. "Where are you? The florist says the payment didn't go through because you were supposed to confirm it. And the seating plan, you had the only updated copy. The photographer wants to start but the bride's bracelet is. Where did you put it? Why didn't you tell me you were leaving the house? Your sister is in tears. This is not the time to be selfish. Call me back right now." I closed my eyes as her voice faded. Selfish. That word didn't sting like she meant it to. Instead it felt like a door clicking shut behind me. A door I had finally stepped through. I stood and walked to the window. Frost still clung to the glass, patterns of white tracing along the edges. Down the street I saw another neighbor scraping ice from his windshield. Life continued effortlessly even while my mother's world spun without me. Then my phone buzzed again, this time a text message from my sister. "Mom said you're sick. Is that true? Please tell me what's going on. Everything's messed up. They're blaming me now." I exhaled slowly, my breath fogging the cold window pane. My sister's message carried a different tone. Not anger. Not blame. Confusion. Fear. Maybe even guilt. I typed a reply then erased it. Typed again then erased it. Not because I didn't care, because I finally understood the difference between caring and sacrificing. Before I could decide what to say, a second message came in. "Mom said you picked a bad day to disappear." Disappear. They hadn't noticed the signs. The exhaustion. The disrespect. The quiet breaking inside me over the years. Not one of them had paused long enough to ask why I suddenly withdrew. They assumed disappearance, not decision. I turned from the window and sat back down on the bed. My fingers trembled, not with fear but with the unfamiliar sensation of choosing myself. I opened my contacts and scrolled to my sister's name. I tapped call. She answered on the first ring. "Where are you?" she whispered, voice shaky and tired. "I'm home," I replied softly. "Home? Mom said you left early. She said you were supposed to." "She said many things," I interrupted gently. Silence pulsed on the other end. Then, "Everything's a mess. Mom is yelling at everyone. The hairdresser is threatening to leave. The photographer says he can't wait much longer. And the bracelet, Mom said you had it." "I did," I said. "But she never asked me where I put it." Another silence. But this one wasn't empty. It was filled with realization. "You're not coming, are you?" she whispered. I didn't answer, not directly. Instead I said, "I needed space." My sister's voice cracked. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because you never listened," I thought. "Because you were always running after her approval just like I used to. Because you didn't want to see what she was doing to me, not really." But I didn't say any of that. "I didn't want to make today harder," I said instead. "It already is," she whispered. I felt my chest tighten. I cared for her deeply. But caring didn't mean returning to a place where I was only valued for what I provided. "I'm sorry," I said. And I meant it. "But I can't be there today." My sister sniffed. "Mom's blaming me. She said I should have checked on you." "She shouldn't blame you," I said. "This is between her and me." A muffled voice yelled in the distance on her end. My mother. The same sharp timbre. The same way of blaming the closest target. My sister whispered, "I have to go." "I know," I replied. The call ended. I sat there for a moment, breathing steadily, letting the reality settle. They were finally experiencing a world where I wasn't the one saving everything. Then almost on cue 3 more calls came through, vendors this time. The florist. The photographer. A number I didn't recognize. All seeking clarity. All expecting the voice they were used to, my voice. I didn't answer any of them. I picked up my packed bag, slung it over my shoulder and walked toward the front door. The house felt different as I passed through it. Emptier, cooler, almost relieved. Stepping outside, the winter air wrapped around me in a crisp embrace. A veil of morning fog hovered low across the street. The world seemed softer than the chaos unfolding miles away. As I locked the door behind me, my phone buzzed once more, this time with a picture message. A photo of the wedding arch, half decorated. A crooked arrangement. Colors mismatched. Guests standing around, puzzled. Below it, a message from a distant cousin. Your mom is losing it. People are asking where you are. Everything's delayed. Are you okay? I stared at the screen for a long moment. Was I okay? For the first time in years. Yes, I was. I slipped the phone into my pocket, walked to my car and turned the key in the ignition. The engine hummed softly, steady and reliable. Unlike them, it didn't demand anything from me. As I pulled out of the driveway, another message pinged on my phone. I didn't check it. The wedding morning had turned into a storm without me. And I wasn't going back into the rain. But the storm followed me anyway, not through the weather outside, but through the steady vibration of my phone on the passenger seat beside me. Every buzz felt like a knock on a door I had already closed. I glanced at the screen only once, long enough to see a flood of message previews stacking on top of each other like falling dominoes. I didn't open a single one. The highway stretched ahead of me, still quiet with early morning frost clinging to the edges of the pavement. The sky had that soft, pale blue glow that only appears before the sun fully commits to rising. I kept my eyes forward, hands steady on the wheel, letting the hum of the car drown out every echo of yesterday's obligations. But halfway down the road, a new notification flashed. Photo received. I didn't mean to look. But something about the way the thumbnail glowed, uneven colors, scattered shapes, pulled my attention. I tapped the image lightly while still holding the wheel steady. The picture opened across the screen. Rows of chairs. All crooked. Half a floral arch. 2 flower girls sitting on the ground looking bored. A white tablecloth lying crumpled near a hedge, like someone had dragged it there and forgotten it. Then another notification appeared directly under it. People are whispering about you. They want to know why you're not here. Not a question, an observation. This wasn't just a minor inconvenience anymore. This was a scene unraveling publicly, thread by thread. The phone buzzed again. Cousin this time. Did something happen between you and your mother? Your sister looks overwhelmed. Aunt Marie said you walked out. Is that true? Walked out. Disappeared. Selfish. Everyone had their own version of the story and none of them matched the truth. I turned the phone face down on the seat again, trying to steady my breath. But my chest tightened, not from guilt, but from the unfamiliar sensation of becoming the center of a storm I didn't create, didn't cause, didn't want. I drove another 10 miles before pulling into a rest stop. A few cars dotted the lot. A man scraped ice off his windshield. A woman walked her dog along a patch of grass dusted with frost. Normal life. Ordinary life. Life without screaming brides or frantic mothers. I parked, turned off the engine and let the silence settle. The moment I stopped moving, the phone buzzed again. More insistent this time. It buzzed so hard it rattled against the plastic cup holder. I reached for it, intending to silence it entirely. But the screen lit up with a video this time. Automatically playing on loop. Sent by another cousin. My breath caught. The video showed my mother in the middle of the venue. Hair undone. Face flushed. Her voice rising above all others as she snapped at a group of people trying to arrange the arch. I told her to be here early, my mother was saying. She knows what needs to be done. She's the only one who understood this layout. Someone behind the camera muttered, "Why didn't she come?" And my mother's voice sharpened. Because she only thinks of herself. I swear she ruined this on purpose. The video cut off as a bridesmaid walked past the camera, blocking the view. I stared at the frozen frame for a long moment, my own reflection staring back from the screen. My face looked calm, but my hands were trembling slightly, not from fear, but from the weight of hearing my mother blame me so openly, so effortlessly in front of a crowd. She had rewritten the story in real time. And people were believing her. Somewhere. Another message rolled in. This one short. From an aunt I rarely spoke to. Is what she's saying true? Because it doesn't sound like you. There was. The first crack in their narrative. I took a slow breath, letting the cold air from the car vents fill my lungs. My fingers hovered over the screen, not to text back, but to scroll through the endless new messages piling up. One stood out. My sister. This time it wasn't frantic or confused. It was something else entirely. They're asking about you. Everyone. Mom can't keep her story straight. Please just tell me you're safe. Safe. Not obedient. Not responsible. Not useful. Safe. I felt something pinch behind my eyes. An ache that wasn't quite sadness and wasn't quite relief. Just something in between. Something tender. I typed a reply slowly. I'm safe. I paused. Then added. And I needed space. I didn't explain further. I didn't justify myself. My sister didn't reply right away and I didn't expect her to. She had her own fires to put out. I opened the car door and stepped outside, letting the cold air sting my cheeks awake. The morning sun was finally rising, brushing warm gold across the frozen parking lot. I wrapped my arms around myself and walked toward the edge of the rest stop, where a row of bare trees stood against the sky. A soft crunch of gravel behind me made me turn. A woman, about my age, was walking her dog, a small terrier wearing a blue sweater. She smiled faintly as she passed. Cold morning, she said. Very cold, I replied. The dog sniffed my shoe. She laughed gently. He thinks everyone has snacks. I smiled back. A normal conversation. A normal moment. Something grounding in the middle of chaos. But it didn't last long. When I returned to the car, another wave of messages awaited me. This time from numbers I didn't recognize. Florists. Caterers. The makeup artist. All circling the same question. Your mother said you were handling this. Can you confirm the plan? We need direction. Direction. They had always come to me for direction. But now my silence forced them to turn to the one person who always claimed she had everything under control. I wasn't the storm. I was the missing wall that kept their storm from flooding the room. I took a deep breath and finally opened one text, just one, from a cousin who was known for being observant. Your mom said you refused to come unless certain things changed. But then your sister said you didn't say anything like that. What's the truth? There it was. The unraveling thread. I typed back slowly. I wasn't welcome unless I changed myself. So I left. I hesitated. Then added. I needed peace. I hit send before I could talk myself out of it. Almost immediately another message arrived. Not a response. A photo. A candid shot of my mother clutching a clipboard, face tight, mouth twisted in frustration. Behind her, guests looked uncomfortable. Someone in the background was pointing toward the entrance as if expecting me to walk in at any moment. But I wasn't coming. And the room knew it. A text came with the picture. People heard what she said to you. They're talking. Another crack. A bigger one. I leaned back in the seat, the leather cool against my shoulders, letting all of it sink in. The wedding had become a mirror, reflecting every hidden cruelty, every ignored resentment, every whispered insult. My absence wasn't the scandal. Her behavior was. I started the engine again, feeling lighter than I had in years. I wasn't driving away from something anymore. I was driving toward something mine. Just as I shifted into gear, my phone buzzed one final time. A message from a number I didn't recognize. Short. Simple. Good for you. I didn't know who sent it. But I smiled. For the first time, people were seeing the truth without me having to say it. And the day wasn't even over yet. That last message, good for you, lingered in my mind longer than I expected. It settled somewhere deep inside my chest, not loud or triumphant but steady. Affirming. Like a whisper reminding me I wasn't crazy for wanting peace. I wasn't selfish for stepping away. I wasn't wrong for choosing myself. Still, even with that warmth in my ribs, a part of me knew I couldn't stay away forever. Not because they deserved my return but because closure required presence. A story doesn't end in the middle of a highway or a rest stop parking lot. It ends where the wounds were made. And for me that was home. So, after sitting in the car longer than I meant to, I pulled back onto the road and made the quiet decision to return. Not to fix, not to fold, not to save them. But to finish this. On my terms. The drive back felt different from the drive out. When I left the house earlier, it had felt like escaping a fire. Now it felt like walking back into a room after the flames had already burned themselves out, leaving only ash behind. When I turned onto my street, the sun was beginning its slow dip toward evening, brushing the rooftops in a pale gold. A few neighbors were raking leaves. Someone's wind chimes danced lightly in the cold breeze. Everything looked the same, and yet I felt like I was arriving in a version of my life I had never lived before. I parked in front of the house and turned off the engine. My hands remained on the steering wheel for a long moment, not hesitating, just absorbing. I had spent years entering this house with the quiet hope of being treated gently. Today I entered without hope. Only clarity. When I stepped out of the car, I noticed the curtains of the living room window shift, just barely. Someone was watching. I took my time walking up the path, the gravel crunching under my shoes, the cold air pinching my cheeks pink. My key slid into the lock, and the familiar click echoed in the hallway as the door swung open. My mother stood in the foyer, still wearing her dress from the wedding, wrinkled and slightly askew. Her hair was falling out of its bun, and her makeup looked smudged around her eyes. She looked older than I remembered. Not aged, aged is graceful. This was worn. When our eyes met, she didn't speak right away. She just stared, her chest rising and falling in small, uneven breaths. "You came back," she finally said. "I live here," I answered softly. Her lips pressed together. "You ruined today." There was the accusation I'd been expecting. Not a question. Not a concern. A verdict. But I didn't flinch. "Sounds like today ruined itself." A faint tremor rippled through her posture. She stepped back as I moved deeper into the hallway. The house smelled faintly of cold food and the flower arrangements my sister had brought home days before. It smelled like stress, like sweat under perfume, like a celebration that collapsed under its own weight. My sister appeared next, walking slowly from the dining room. Her eyes were red, not from anger but from crying. When she saw me, her shoulders collapsed in relief. "Thank God," she whispered. "I didn't know if you were okay." "I'm fine," I said gently. "Just tired." She moved as if to hug me, then stopped herself, unsure. Instead, she reached out and touched my arm lightly. "Mom blamed me," she said in a fragile voice. "She said I should have kept you in line." My mother whipped her head toward her. "I never said that." "You did," my sister interrupted. For the first time in years, she cut her off. "You absolutely did." My mother's mouth opened, then closed. She looked from her to me, back again, suddenly unsure of which story she had told to whom. I took a slow breath. "Where's everyone else?" "Gone," my sister said. "The wedding's over." Her voice broke slightly on the last word. "It was bad. Really bad. People started asking questions you couldn't answer. Someone told the groom's family what you said to me last week. Another cousin said you were yelling about her weight this morning. And then the photographer refused to keep working until someone paid him." My mother stiffened. "He was being dramatic." "No," my sister whispered, shaky. "You were." The room went unbearably quiet. My mother's eyes darted to me, searching for some version of the daughter who used to jump in and fix things, defend her, smooth everything over. But that daughter was gone. She'd left the moment my mother turned my worth into a condition. "What did you expect me to do?" my mother snapped finally, voice breaking with frustration. "Just let you show up and ruin all the photos? Embarrass the family? You don't understand what it's like trying to hold everything together." "I do," I said. "Because I was the one doing it." She blinked. Blinked again. "What are you talking about?" "You've depended on me for years," I said calmly. "And you never acknowledged it. You wrote half the wedding tasks in my handwriting and didn't even remember it. You planned everything around me being the quiet one who solved everything. That's not fair." "It's true." The air between us grew heavy, like the house itself was listening. My mother opened her mouth again, but this time nothing came out. My sister stepped closer to me, wiping at her eyes. "Everyone kept asking where you were. Mom kept lying to them. Every version of her story was different. People figured it out. Every single person realized something was off." My mother's face reddened. "Your sister abandoned us. That's what was off." "No," I said softly. "I stopped being invisible." A tremor ran through her jaw, subtle but real. She swallowed hard. For the first time, uncertainty cracked through her mask. "You humiliated this family," she whispered. "No," I said again firmly. "I told the truth with my absence. And people finally noticed it." My sister nodded slowly, eyes on the floor. "They did," she murmured. "Aunt Marie pulled me aside and asked if you were okay. Uncle Jeff asked if Mom had pushed you too far. Even the groom's mother asked if something happened between you two." My mother looked stunned. Truly stunned. As if she hadn't considered that strangers could see through her entitlement. As if the world wasn't obligated to believe her version of our lives. I stepped closer. You said I'd ruin the wedding just by being myself. You said I'd embarrass you in photos. You said losing weight was the only way you'd accept me there. My voice didn't shake. I didn't ruin anything. I just stopped participating in a system where I wasn't respected. Her eyes glistened, but not from sorrow. From something harder. Pride? Fear? I couldn't tell. You left us helpless, she said quietly. I shook my head. No, Mom. I left you accountable. The realization landed in her like a stone, slowly, heavily, undeniably. Her shoulders slumped, her gaze dropping to the floor. She wasn't used to being confronted, especially not by me. My sister stepped between us. Not to protect me, to face her own truth too. Mom, she said, voice small but steady, she didn't ruin anything. You did. My mother's breath hitched. She blinked rapidly as if hoping the room might shift into a version that favored her again. But it didn't. The silence that followed wasn't like the old silence. The suffocating, heavy kind. This was different. This silence felt like air clearing after a storm, revealing the wreckage honestly for the first time. I took a step back. I'm leaving for a retreat tomorrow, I said. A week away. Maybe longer. My mother's head snapped up. You can't just leave. I can, I said simply. And I am. My sister nodded slowly. I think it's good for you, she whispered. My mother looked between us, baffled. As if this moment, this shift, this accountability, was the twist she never saw coming. And then I watched something flicker across her face. Not apology. Not understanding. But recognition. Recognition that the version of me she controlled was gone. And I wasn't coming back. I walked toward the stairs. She didn't follow. My sister didn't either. They just stood there, frozen in the new reality my absence had created. At the top of the stairs I turned back one last time. The house looked the same. But it finally saw me clearly. And I finally saw myself. I didn't ruin your wedding, I said softly. But I did save my life. Then I went upstairs, closed my bedroom door gently behind me, and let the quiet wash over me like a blessing. For the first time in my life the silence felt like mine. And it was enough. If this story touched something in your heart, join me for more women's stories of courage, dignity, and quiet justice. Hit subscribe and tell me in the comments, where are you watching from tonight?